Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is the Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we are going to be talking about Block Debuff Champions for Clan Boss specifically. There's a lot of them. There's about 20 or so that I want to go over today. So there's not going to be a super fast video, but we're going to cover all the champions that I think have any possible usage in Clan Boss, going from rare champions all the way up to the legendaries. So I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to try and do it in a pseudo order, starting with the least effective to the most effective, but obviously there's a little bit of an interplay in there based off the team you're using, what you need, and that sort of thing. And so we're going to be talking about that today. Block debuffs, of course, is vitally important for Clan Boss, because not only can you really not speed tune against Spirit Affinity without it because of that decreased speed debuff, you need to block that or cleanse it. That's an alternate way to go, but also because of the stun. And if you take a stun, that's basically throwing away a turn for one of your champions, and that can be really difficult to deal with. So there's a variety of champions that can deal with this. You know, sometimes we just need one turn block debuff. We can use an extender to make that into a 2-turn, or maybe we're just worried about the stun. We're not worried about affinity, or we have somebody going fast enough to take the stun, tank it, so to speak. Or perhaps, you know, what we're doing is we're using a combination of cleansers and block debuff champions. So I have a couple people in here that can only do it for 1 turn, and that's definitely a knock against them. And there's a lot of champions that can do it for 2 turns. We have a lot more available to us than we used to, matter of fact. So I'm going to cover them all. I'm going to try and talk really briefly, go through them rather quickly on which ones can be good for you, which ones you're going to want to use primarily, and which ones you're going to want to focus on, that sort of thing. So yeah, let's look at the champions. So the first champion I'm going to talk about is one I really probably don't recommend you use, because there's some situational stuff with that. It's going to be Quargan the Crown. Now, you know, he has some interesting things, right? I guess like increase in duration of a buff on an ally, some healing, which is actually really nice, and a shield buff for all allies, that sort of thing. Those are all really good skills. The one we were talking about, those, is A3 ability. Now, books down to a 4-turn cooldown. So you'd have to put him on a 4-3 ratio to have this be regular, right? That's something we need to keep in mind. But he places a block debuff for 1 turn, along with an increased defense buff for 2 turns on allies whose defense is higher than their attack. This is why I don't recommend them. You have to only have allies with their defense higher than their attack, which for Clan Boss is, you know, more often than not, but still, that's not a great caveat to have. It's only for 1 turn as well, which makes it a lot less useful. This is somebody I generally don't recommend using. And that brings us to Witness, who I think may be the next weakest. This is somebody I've never built, never really used. But looking at her kit, I think that there's definitely some viability to using her in Clan Boss. I don't know how she has a bow with no string on it, but hey, I guess it can work for her. Basically, this is A3 skill here. Books down to a 4-turn cooldown. Again, a 1-turn block debuff on all allies as a result. With the shield, and the shield is not bad. 30% of her max HP for all allies. That's not a bad little addition to this skill. Her multipliers are decent. She has some other interesting things on her kit. Not enough where I would ever really build her, but if you're really desperate, you could potentially use her. And then we have Odachi, who's an interesting champion from the Shadowkin faction. He doesn't have a lot of his kit that works for Clan Boss, right? Provoke on the A1, a shield, which is cool on the A2. But the big one is going to be this block debuffs and increased defense ability on the A3. It does book to a 3-turn cooldown. This makes him viable for Clan Boss, really viable. It is the smaller increased defense, so less helpful, but it is only a 1-turn block debuff. So again, not the best thing in the world, but can really come through in a pinch for you if you're really desperate to block one of those debuffs. Can be pretty solid. Also has decent multipliers in his kit. His base defense and HP aren't horrible, especially for a rare champion. So definitely somebody that I think, and base defense is actually pretty good for a rare champion. So this is somebody that I would definitely be considering to use if you really need someone to block debuffs. One of the more underrated champions in this game, Seducer here, is really, really good at a variety of things with this. Kind of an interesting champ. Sleep on the A1 doesn't matter, but decreased attack on that A2 is pretty nice and situationally very helpful. And then you have this A3, and it's a 5-turn cooldown, books to 4-turn cooldown, so reasonable. But he does an increased defense, the smaller one, but more importantly, does a block debuff on all allies for 2 turns. This means if you time it out right and you build your team right, you follow a lot of the guidances we would use with like a Sepulcher Sentinel, you can block debuffs for both the AoEs, so the affinity debuffs, as well as the stun on your team, just using Seducer. That's a really nice thing when you can just bring in one champion to have to deal with it, rather than bringing in two champions, someone to cleanse and someone to deal with it. It makes it a lot easier to deal with on your team. On top of that, he's got an incredibly strong base defense, very good base HP. And if you got really bold and wanted to bring in Temptress, which I don't recommend, you also get an ally protection from him. So he's got a really cool little kit here. He is somebody I've built up to 60. I've not quite used him in Clan Boss myself, but I know that possibility exists, and I know that he would be good at it. However, even though Seducer is the one rare that I think would be phenomenal at being able to block both the AoE and the stun debuff, the one I generally recommend in the rare affinity, the rare rarity is Marked. As a rare champion, Marked is fantastic. Primarily, I mean, got some cool things, right? Decreased defense on the A1, always good, even if it's a weak one. Decreased accuracy is not really important, but the big one is this A3, block debuff for 1 turn, and the big increased defense buff. And this is all on a 3-turn cooldown here. This is really nice because these are the kind of stats and skills that you get from like a epic level champion on a rare kit. Now, she does have a pretty poor base defense. She does have good, very good base HP at almost 20,000 and solid base speed. So this is a champion that I have leveled up to 60. I have used her in Clan Boss before. She is very effective. She's not going to deal a lot of damage for you, but as far as helping your team stay alive with a block debuff as well as an increased defense, I definitely think she can do the job. Let's just say she protects your team more than her clothes protect her from the inclement weather, because they just don't. And that starts to bring us firmly into the epic category. And one I want to start with here is Scathix. Now, Scathix is a really cool champion. A1's not for Clan Boss, decreased speed. A2 is not for Clan Boss, steals a random buff. I mean, that's okay. It can be useful, but not what we're looking for. What we are looking at, though, is this A3 skill, books to a 4-turn cooldown, right? Places, first off, it's a cleanse, so it removes all the debuffs from your allies. That's always nice. And then places block debuffs and a shield on all allies for 2 turns. The shield's equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. This is actually a really, really nice ability. If one of the ways that you could use this skill, if you put Scathix on a 4-turn cooldown and make this so that the double turn happens right before the stun, after the AoEs, and this is the first skill used, you can time it, in theory anyway, to cleanse the affinity debuffs, put block debuffs and a shield on your allies, so that now when the stun comes in, not only do they have block debuffs up, but they also have a nice shield to help tank that for you. A really good champion. Definitely somebody I would be looking at to build. Not a great damage dealer, decent multipliers, but nothing like crazy. And he's got solid base stats, nothing wild. He's got a sweet little passive there that's gonna kind of be in and out because on a 6-turn cooldown, so it's not gonna work every time for you. But definitely somebody that I think would be a very good alternative for Clan Boss. Anytime you can have a 2-turn block debuff on a 4-turn cooldown or less, it's going to be really, really nice for your team. And then we talk about Sanguina here. Sanguina is actually a really nice champion as well. She's got a triple attack on the A1. That's definitely helpful because we can use Giant Slayer and Clan Boss. Now this A2 is where her block debuff is. It's a 1-turn block debuff, so not the best. Again, we talked about that, but also brings continuous heal, which is always useful. The good thing is her A3 here also brings a cleanse, so removes all debuffs from all allies, except this champion. So this is like, there's like pros and cons to it, right? That's where you're going to get yourselves into trouble, is it doesn't cleanse her own debuffs. But it does have a chance of transferring this champion's debuffs from the champion to the target. Now, I'll admit, I haven't fully tested her. I haven't really seen what she can do in Clan Boss. I'm not sure if this will pretty much guarantee her transferring whatever debuffs she gets from Affinity to the Clan Boss. But if it does, you can use her much in the way I was just talking about Scathix, where you start with the A4 skill on that double turn, cleanses the affinity debuffs, and then right before the stun, where I would imagine she'd go last, she places the block debuffs to allow you to resist, to not have to worry about the stun at all. So that is certainly a possibility there. If you end up not booking the A3 as well, And so you book the A3, you don't book the A2. So they're both on a 4-turn cooldown. It makes it a little simpler where you can kind of pick and choose where you want to use each individual skill as well. But I definitely like the fact that she's got that triple attack on the A1. I do like the fact that all of that, both the A3 and the A1 are attacked, so you're getting more damage out of these skills. And the nice little continuous heal helps with the healing. Plus, she's got really good base stats, really good base speed, good base HP, so pretty easy to build her solid for clan boss as well. Makes a big difference. Now, before we got all these additional champions that can do all these things, Mausoleum Mage was one of the best block debuff champions because it was on a 3-turn cooldown. So you can see here this A2 skill, right? It's a 4-turn cooldown. Books down to 3 where she can place increased defense and block debuffs on all allies for 1 turn. Not to mention increased crit rate buff is really nice. Now, not a damage dealer. That's the biggest negative. Doesn't deal a lot of individual damage. Also has this A3 skill, which is interesting. And being able to time this with clan boss is a little trickier, where you get a cleanse from everybody and a heal. One of the, so it becomes a little bit interesting. This book's to a 4-turn cooldown. And again, when you have the block debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown and the cleanse on the 4-turn cooldown, the cleanse comes first, right? That's the thing that gates the other skill. The higher cooldown always gates the lower cooldown abilities. So, it's always a little bit tricky trying to get those things to time out right. But again, you can potentially use this the same way I was talking about with Scathix and Sanguina, where you cleanse the affinity and then block the stun. It's going to take a little bit of figuring out, right? What are the speeds you actually need to get there so that even one tick from the decreased speed debuff won't throw your whole team off. But there's definitely potential of that with a Mausoleum Mage here. But most of the time, whenever we've used her, we've just ignored the A3, and you can do this with Sanguina just the same way. And just focus on the A2 skill, so that becomes the prioritized skill, and especially with the skill priority now we can just ignore the A3, which is great. But you just prioritize the A3 and just block the debuff that you're trying to block. That could be a really, really positive thing. Not to mention the increased defense and the increased crit rate are really nice. Definitely like that as well. The A1's not going to do anything for us, so. And then we have Grizzled Jarl, who is just such a great addition to this game. He has a very interesting kit. Now, his block debuff is just like Mausoleum Mage. A 3-turn cooldown when booked, a 1-turn duration of the block debuff. Also brings the increased defense. This is really good for your clan boss team. Interesting, A1 brings a heal reduction. This is actually an ability we don't need. So there's options where you build this champion without any accuracy whatsoever. And then the A3, it's a 4-turn cooldown, brings a decreased attack. It's really good for clan boss. But remember how we said the A3 is going to gate the A2. So if we're prioritizing the A2 with the block debuffs, because that's what we need, right? Then the A3 is going to be pretty haphazard. You see this a lot, not only with Grizzled Jarl, but you see this with Martyr as well, where you can't really get a regular usage of that decreased attack. So it's hard to rely on that for something like Clan Boss. Still, very good champion. Definitely somebody I recommend. He can also hit really hard, which is one of the great things. A defensive-based champion. So you can build him with damage and you will get something out of that. So he's not just protecting your team, he's also dealing damage to the clan boss. That's why I definitely have him ranked ahead of the champions that just came before him. All right, we're not done with the epics just yet, but we're starting to get to that point where some of these legendaries aren't even as good as some of the epics for what we're looking for. And one of those is going to be Hackhorn Smashlord. Now, Hackhorn's a great legendary. Well, he's okay. He definitely can be annoying in places like the arena where he's got incredible heal ability. And that's this A2 skill, right? Removes all debuffs, so it's a full cleanse, and then places block debuffs for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. This can be incredibly good for arena. For clan boss, not quite as much so, right? Obviously, if you build a team around him, like we were talking about, trying to time the skills can be really good, but it's always difficult to do that. Heals all allies 15% of the HP and an extra 10% for each debuff removed. So if you can get that skill to remove the debuffs from the AoEs, that's actually a pretty powerful heal, and then places block debuffs on top of that. His A1 can definitely deal some damage. It's not what I would say is a super strong, super crazy hitting skill, but it is solid. He's an HP-based champion, so if you build him with high HP and he's got incredible base HP, it can definitely be good and deal some damage for your team. The hard part is his A3 skill, which books to a 4-turn cooldown, but I don't know that you'd actually use this on Clan Boss because he's going to hurt himself to then deal damage, which it's a very strong hitting skill. But for Clan Boss, I don't think this is helpful, especially because it's always a normal hit. You're not critting on it. Generally, you're just going to turn this skill off. I think is the best way to do it. Turn the skill off, and then you're going to be just fine, and you can just slap the Clan Boss with their A1, and the A3 here can just block the debuffs and heal your allies. Again, it's not great for it, and I feel like he's probably better used in other areas of this game for you. But, you know, if you're really desperate for a block debuff champion, I think you can definitely do worse than Hackhorn Smashlord. The next one I'm talking about is Glycea Soul Guide, who's one of the newest champions we've gotten here. She has a block debuff on her A3, books to a 4-turn cooldown, and it's a 2-turn block debuff. That's great. It's a great ability. Nothing wrong with that, right? The freeze and the turn meter, the passive ability, none of that stuff's going to matter. She does also has a weakened debuff, which is really nice to be able to have that in addition. So she's bringing a little bit extra on that A2, and the A1 is just it's just the A1. So she's solid. She's got great base defense, good base speed, HP, all that stuff. So she could be really, really good. The thing is, of course, you're not going to use her for Clan Boss. You want to use her for Arena. You want to use her for other areas of this game. This is not the spot where we want to use her. But that said, definitely solid, right? You're not only bringing the block debuffs, but you're bringing a sweet debuff in weaken. That's a pretty good combination there. But now I think we've gone through the mediocre legendaries. We got one more. We got one more. Hold on. Okay, this is the last of the mediocre legendary champions that you want to use for this. And we're going to finish it off here with Manaya. And the reason why Manaya even makes the list is this A3 ability here, where she will place a block debuffs for 2 turns on champions under an increased defense buff. Now, I know, like, so first off, there's a caveat. You have to have an increased defense buff, and then you can use the block. Then the block debuffs will happen. Otherwise, it's just a heal. Now, I know it's like, why is Manaya even on this list? I'm gonna break it down why she's really good for this, why she's one of the best healers in this game. First off, heals all allies by 40% of their max HP. That's a massive heal, right? It's their HP, not hers, but still a massive heal, right? Anybody fully healed gets a shield buff. Well, that's pretty nice, right? So you're getting a huge heal, you're getting a shield buff, you're getting the block debuffs. Just got to make sure you're getting increased defense from somewhere else on your team. And for Clan Boss, you should have increased defense up for pretty much the full fight. So makes sense, right? Makes sense. The A2 here has a massive 10,000 HP heal. That's a pretty big heal generally. The heal reduction is not necessarily, you don't need accuracy on or whatsoever. And the A1 will place a continuous heal on an ally with the lowest HP. So you're getting a lot of healing out of her kit. Basically, every skill does healing. Not to mention, her A1 and her A2 both hit really hard. So if you build her with damage, she can do damage for you. Granted, it's based off of attack, so maybe you don't. But if you wanted to, it's going to give you some decent results. Her passive ability is basically when she dies, it's not going to impact us. One of the bigger things, though, that she does bring for your team is an all-ally speed in all ally aura, right? 19% speed aura. It's phenomenal. That's always really great. When you can build less speed on your champions, it makes a massive difference to your build. So that part in and of itself is really nice. But all that stuff kind of combined is why I actually like Manaya as a block debuff champion. Now, would I recommend her for that? No, I would not. But she does bring a lot to the table and is definitely somebody worth keeping in your head. The hard part is you kind of have to build your team around her. You have to make sure that you have increased defense up when she's using that skill, and that can be a little bit tricky and problematic. So not my favorite necessarily, but definitely somebody to keep in mind as an option here. In all honesty, probably less good than Hackhorn or Glycea, to be truthful. Glycea. Okay, and that's going to bring us back to the epics. Specifically Sepulcher Sentinel, who's just absolutely phenomenal. Still kind of the queen of this role here. There's really only one other champion that I prefer to bring in for this type of role than Sepulcher Sentinel. The reason why she just brings so much that you need for the Clan Boss. Not only does she bring block debuffs for 2 turns, she also brings an increased defense buff, which is huge, right? On top of that, her A1 brings decreased attack, which you absolutely have to have against the Clan Boss. So you're getting decreased attack, increased defense, and block debuffs. What else do you need? This is a 4-turn cooldown when booked. So that is definitely an issue. You definitely need to put her on that 4-3 ratio and time the skill so you can block the affinity and the stun, but it's a very, very doable thing. And doesn't take a ton of books, right? Only one to get that block debuffs down. Now, one thing that does take books, and I do recommend booking it, is this passive ability. That 25% chance of completely blocking incoming damage books up to 50%. That can be a game changer for your team. I've seen that proc at just the right time so often. It's phenomenal, especially when you consider the stun, right? Because the stun's attacking one champion, so it's a 50-50 shot whether it blocks the damage on that champion. That can be huge for you. Now, with the AoEs, it's one of your 5 champions, a 50-50 shot of it happening, and then it's one of the 5 champions that you have on your team, so it's a little bit less common. And actually, there's a weird thing with this passive where it always works on either the leader or the next champion in order. So if she's your leader, it'll happen on the champion that's second in your team order, or if she's not the leader, it'll happen on the leader for that passive ability to work. So just, FYI on that. But if obviously with the stun, it'll just happen with whoever's going to be taking the stun. It's a really good skill. She's a really great champion, very solid base stats. Her base HP is a little bit on the lower side, so it's hard to keep that up, but just a phenomenal, phenomenal champion. Highly recommend as a block debuff champion for you. Okay, now we're talking about the extravagant teams, the weird and the hard to build. Talking about Siphi the Lost Bride. Now, she's just a phenomenal champion. I'm sure you know how great she is with the block debuffs, increased defense, increased speed, all great. Books down to a 4-turn cooldown. They all last for 2 turns. She's phenomenal. A1's, it's the sleep. It's not important. But the important thing with her, she also has this great passive ability of healing, which is great. Heals everybody 10% of their max HP. It's really, really nice. The hard part with her is this is on a 4-turn cooldown, and it brings an increased speed buff, which means you have to tune your entire team around that buff. That's why I don't bring her into my clan boss teams. She's also way better in every other aspect of the game. So if you're using her in clan boss, I would highly consider rethinking that. I think she's going to be way, way more useful in every other aspect of the game than clan boss. But if you're absolutely desperate, I've definitely seen teams that are, work with her as the center point, and she can definitely do the job. But it is going to take some speed tuning to make it work just right. One champion I always have wished I had, and I think is really good, is Blind Seer. Now, I think for clan boss, she's pretty good. Not spectacular, but very, very good is why she makes it on the list at this point. But she has this block debuff for 2 turns. It books down to a 3-turn cooldown, and it places a very large shield on everybody. This is a really, really nice skill that can help keep your team alive and block all the debuffs. 3-turn cooldowns are great because doesn't take a lot of crazy speed tuning to make it work for you. On top of that, she has a triple attack on the A1, which means you can start using Giant Slayer, which is great. Her A3 skill is one we generally don't use. It's just a revive anyway, so it's not going to come up unless you need to revive your champions. But you do have that available. She's got solid base stats, incredible base speed, actually. Definitely somebody that can work really well for you on that. But the champion I would probably use instead of Blind Seer is going to be Warlord. And the reason why is Warlord also has a block debuffs, also has a huge shield, and a big heal on top of that. Now, the one thing about him is it's only a 1-turn block debuff. So in some respects, not as good as Blind Seer. And so there's a real argument. Which one would be better for you, right? Being able to block debuffs for 2 turns, pretty massive. But the thing that Warlord does bring is on his A1 has a chance, 25%, books up to 40, to increase the duration of all debuffs on the target. So debuff increase is really nice. You can build him in a counterattack team. This can be a really, really strong ability to help you keep your debuffs full time. Now, it doesn't proc nearly enough to make it be so you don't have to worry about debuffs falling off. They will fall off, but it is still a really nice skill. He doesn't use his A3 on clan boss, so you don't even have to worry about that. He's just going to use his A2 and his A1. Really nice skills. A big heal, a big shield, and a block debuffs for 1 turn is good. It's not 2 turns, which is the only thing really holding him back, but it's still a really, really, really nice skit. And that brings us to the new guy, to Tour Rimehide, who many of us have from the fusion. It's going to be great for clan boss, right? Now, we do know he's got this veil, and it is on a 4-turn cooldown. Unfortunately, that kind of gates when he uses his skills. This is actually less useful for us than we'd like to think. And in a lot of respects, I'd recommend turning this off, or at least not making it prioritized. What I would prioritize is A3 skill here, which gives you a block debuffs and an increased defense for 2 turns. That's always great, right? You can block all the AoEs, you can block all the debuffs, right? From the stun to the AoE, the affinity, whatever. With this skill, because it's 2 turns, increased defense on top of that is really nice to help keep your team alive. Now, the rest of his kit, like I said, is not going to be super helpful. The Perfect Veil, it's great when it's up because you do take less damage. A shield on himself, also good because he takes less damage. And his A1 has a decreased accuracy. You don't need that. So building with accuracy is actually counterproductive. That's not something I would do. His passive's not going to have any impact on him. One thing that he is great at is dealing damage. He's a very good damage dealing champion. So you can build him with a lot of damage, prioritize this A2 skill, and I think you're going to be sailing with Tatura Rimehide, a really, really good champion for clan boss. Now, you might be surprised, but I actually like Duchess a lot for clan boss. Very, very good. Now, generally not a damage dealing champion, right? Not to say that, has terrible multipliers, but doesn't have great multipliers, so not really a damage dealer, but she will keep your team alive forever. Really, really good. Just like you use her in arena, you can use her in clan boss. Now, I generally would not recommend using her for clan boss because I feel like she's better in other areas of the game like arena. But if you need to use her there, she's very good. Increase attack buff on everybody's great. Block debuffs on everybody's great. Perfect veil on everybody's great. These are things where you're blocking the debuffs, you're taking less damage, you're dealing more damage. Can't be angry at any of that. She has a really good heal, and because of how tanky you can build her, because she's got such great base stats, this revive can actually be quite nice. And it comes with a continuous heal, if that can help as well. The big thing is her passive ability, where you take less damage from allies on AoE attacks, and it even works on bosses. 15% less damage from the bosses. It's really good for the AoE attacks that the clan boss delivers. It's very nice. Also has this increased speed in all battles aura. The speed aura, I can't even speak today. But the speed aura is really helpful. So putting her as your lead champion can be really good. The perfect veil is really nice because she doesn't put it on herself, so she becomes a stun target, so you can build her to be the stun target. There's a lot to really, really like about her kit. Again, I do think she's better in other areas of the game, but I 100% think she is fantastic for clan boss. And then we get to the best of the best. These are the above and beyond best champions for clan boss here. And we're going to start with Riho. Riho's absolutely phenomenal. She's got 2 incredible skills. Now, first off, her A1 does some continuous heals. Gotta like that. Can't get angry at that. That's great. But more importantly, her A2 literally puts every debuff you could possibly want on the clan boss. We're talking HP burn, decreased defense, weaken, decreased attack, decreased crit rate. Tired of getting critted by the clan boss? Bring in Riho. Don't have to worry about it. She's phenomenal for this. Just really, really good. The thing is, of course, is that, she's great everywhere. So oftentimes we don't use her for clan boss because she's so much better in other places. But we're not done, because her A3 ability is, of course, removes all debuffs from all allies, full cleanse, and then places block debuffs for 2 turns on them, and also gives allies a massive heal, 35% of their max HP, and a further 5% for each debuff removed from them. It's really, really strong ability. So you get a cleanse and block debuffs for 2 turns. You get every debuff you could want to put on the clan boss. She's pretty phenomenal. Even has decent multipliers. Now, I don't know that I'd ever build her as an attack, really, really build her for clan boss, where you're building her full-on damage style, but you can. The other cool thing is she's got a really nice passive here on a 3-turn cooldown as well. When receiving a debuff, instantly transfers them from this champion to the attacker. That means when you're facing if she takes a stun every single time, she's never going to get stunned. If she takes the affinity debuffs every single time, she's not going to take it. Now, she has a cleanse and a block debuff skill. So with clan boss, because everything's on that 3-turn clan boss attack cycle, this probably will never really come into effect. But the fact that she has it is pretty nice, that you can let her take the stun without blocking any debuffs or dealing with it in any way, and it's going to be just fine. Again, it's never going to come up with clan boss, but it's kind of a cool ability. But she's phenomenal. She brings literally everything you need. She's clan boss made easy, right? I don't have to worry about bringing in any debuffs at all because I have Riho. Maybe some poisons would be good. Maybe. She already brings HP burn. You don't have to worry about dealing with the blocking any debuffs or taking any affinity stuff, because she's going to deal with that too. She's absolutely phenomenal. Baby should be top of this list, but The next two people are pretty good. This is the next one on my list, Cardiel, and he's a champion I don't have, would love to have. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Now, I would never recommend actually using Cardiel for Clan Boss exclusively. I think he's a better arena champion. Just goes to show how good he is, but fantastic for Clan Boss, right? Block debuffs, revive on death with this A2 here. It's on, both of them are for 2 turns. Books down with 3-turn cooldown. Gotta love it. A3, increased crit rate, increased crit damage on all allies for 2 turns, and then has an ally attack ability. Boy, that is really, really nice. Did I mention the A1 heals all allies? Just heals everybody. Why not? Let's not put a continuous heal on them. We're just going to heal them. Fantastic. Passive ability. Yeah, whenever an ally attacks, has a 50% chance to team up with them. So random extra attacks from Cardiel. That's not bad. That's not bad. And what happens when he attacks? Oh yeah, he heals everybody. Pretty good champion. And then ally speed, aura, 19%. Oh yeah, his base stats are amazing as well. Amazing. Cardiel's great all over the game, but he's going to be really good for Clan Boss. We see him in some of the best unkillable teams because of that block debuff ability, because of the ally attack ability. Then you can start really building him for damage, really good. But there's pretty much no any way that you build him for Clan Boss, he's going to be fantastic. Now, obviously, we'd want to prioritize the block debuff skill, right? It's a 3-turn cooldown. The ally attack ability books down to a 4-turn cooldown. So you do need to weigh those skills, which one you want to prioritize, where you want to focus those skills to make sure that you're blocking all the debuffs that you want to block. But boy, really good champion. Really, really good. Almost as good as this next one. Underpriest Brogni, of course, the king of Clan Boss himself, the best block damage champion that we have right now. And it's not just because he can block, it's not just because he can block debuffs, right? 3-turn cooldown when booked for 2-turn duration, gives everybody an increased attack buff. Oh, also gives everybody a big shield. That's not it as all. He also increases the value of shields, right? So you can get some crazy teams. That's where we start getting these Affinity comps with 700 million damage, where you get very solid ally attack comps involving Taragi the Frog that are doing well over 100 million damage. You can pair him with a Valkyrie and get crazy big shields as well. Massive. Not to mention he has an HP burn on his A1, so you can give him accuracy and he does even more damage for you. But in addition to that, every time there's an ally under a shield buff that gets attacked, he has a chance of proccing Giant Slayer. This is why we build him with Giant Slayer, not War Master. It's phenomenal champion. Absolutely one of the best champions in this game, and just amazing for Clan Boss. 100% just great. He's got great base stats too, huge HP, good defense. The one thing is he's an attack-based champion, and he's got phenomenal multipliers. Phenomenal. It's just his base attack is so low. It's very hard to build that up. If you're able to get him to like 3,000 attack, he's going to do crazy good damage for you and build those shields up to crazy high levels. He works even better the higher the ratio. So if you start going at 2-1 ratio, if you can bring another shield champion in, he can be amazing for you to keep your team alive. Not to mention being able to block buffs and deal damage from those shields. He's just an incredibly strong champion, incredibly strong damage dealing champion that helps with survivability, literally everything you want. We got one more champion too. I know some of you thought I forgot about him. Of course I didn't forget about him. Maneater. How could you forget about Maneater? He makes half the comps out there viable, right? Unkillable ability and block debuff, both for 2 turns. Now it's on a 5-turn cooldown. So if you're going to use the block debuff ability, you're going to use the unkillable ability too, right? You're going to build an unkillable team with him, but that's why he's so good. That's why those teams work so well. When you're talking about the Bat Eater, you're talking about easy double Maneater, you're talking about the budget unkillable, because he brings the block debuff with him. He makes the teams affinity friendly in addition to being unkillable. So yeah, kind of a legendary style champion. That's really good. That was long. All right, but we got through it, right? Those are all the unkillable champions. Nope, that's not right. They're all the block damage champions. See, I got you there. All the champions that can block debuff, not block damage, not unkillable, but can block debuffs. All those champions that I think are viable for Clan Boss there for you. It's a lot of them. I know it took a while. Appreciate you being patient and sticking with me here. try to give you some cuts so it wasn't quite so dull and boring, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But, you know, these are important champions. You need to bring them into your clan boss team. You're not going to be successful if you allow the Spirit Affinity to go rampant on your team. You allow the decreased accuracy from Magic Affinity to go rampant on your team. Like, you need to be able to block those debuffs. And you have to deal with the stun. So these are champions that can definitely do that for you and help you with your team. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. And you start looking at some of the champions you might have in your vault and going, oh, you know what? Maybe that's the key to my clan boss team getting better. Anyway, that's all we got for today. Hit that like, subscribe, especially if this was helpful for you. And until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.